Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And welcome to Season 8. So excited to be back. I guess it's been a weird couple of months. So for those of you who may or may not be new here, again, I'm Nikki. I'm a death doula. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and I've been doing this podcast for quite some time. And 10 years ago, well, coming up on 11 years ago now, I lost my only sibling. And then just a couple months ago, as of recording this, I lost my mother very unexpectedly. And her death has been incredibly difficult. It's been a journey. And I was very open about that last season. You might want to go back and check that out. So I apologize. My last couple of episodes, I had intended to record a new episode on grief during the holidays, and it just didn't happen. And I actually did intend on re-airing one for New Year's, which I ended up just doing 2 rebroadcasts because I was a little distracted, I guess you could say, with the sudden and recent loss of my mother. So, but I'm back. I'm getting back into recording. I've recorded at least 2 interviews so far over the last week or so, and it was a little weird getting back into it because it's been a while. So I'm so excited to have this season with you. The first couple interviews I've done have been so wonderful. I'm going to have a couple returning people this season, a couple new people that I know of so far. I don't know what else is coming down the pike. So just happy to be back. So before we dive into today's episode, as always, if you want to help support me and this show, you can go to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. For as little as $1 a month, you can help me out. For more, you can help me more. With all the money I receive through my Patreon, I do provide pro bono services. I have a couple clients I have been working with completely pro bono, and one of them is going to be needing a lot more care in the upcoming months. So any support you want to throw my way would be wonderful. And if you don't want to do the Patreon thing, please reach out to me if you want to support me in another way. I'm sure we can work something out. All right, but enough of that. Let's get on to today's episode. So I want to talk about why I'm trying not to laugh. It's not funny, but it's timely. This is something I found on my list of topic ideas from back near the beginning, and I never did an episode on this. And why I'm choosing to do this one now, it's fitting, I guess. Anyway, stop blubbering, Nikki. So today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to truly accept death. So if you've been listening to my show for a while, you know that grief is not just death. And hopefully you know that already anyway. Anything that was in your life and is not that you have an emotional reaction to, that's grief. And that's okay. So don't ever feel bad about grieving the loss of a pet, the loss of a job, identity, security, friends. Like there's a million relationship loss. There's a million things out there that qualify for grief. But today we're actually going to talk specifically about death. So what is it about death that makes, especially, and again, timely, more sudden deaths? What makes this so hard for us to accept? So it's kind of like there's a finality to it. Once a death happens, spoiler alert, they don't come back. If they did, we'd be having a very different discussion right now. Sorry, I should not make jokes. I've had people reach out and kind of smack me on the hand for my sense of humor a few times. That's kind of who I am. But anyway, but it is very difficult for us as humans to fully grasp and accept death sometimes. And the fact that we've lost somebody and we have lost them forever. They are not coming back in the way that they were here prior to their death, right? And it doesn't matter how they died, if it was sudden, if it was, it tends to be a little more difficult to accept for sudden, and we'll get to that in a minute, but whether it was, even if it was anticipated, if somebody was sick for a very long time, then they're gone. It's still, our brains are just like, what is going on here? Why? It's a shock to us, regardless of whether it's anticipated or not. And it feels weird to be living in a world where that person is no longer physically present. So, regardless of what you believe as far as afterlife or what happens after death, there's always conversations going about connections with the person we had and how they're still with us in some way, shape, or form. We still have a connection to them. But it's the physical connection that we may no longer have. Our brains need time to catch up. It takes our brains time to learn things. If you think about starting a new habit, we're in the new year now. A lot of people do New Year's resolutions like, this is the year I'm going to lose 80 pounds, or this is the year I'm going to run a marathon, whatever it might be. It takes time to develop habits. It takes time for your brain to recognize something as routine or normal. And when you have been interacting with somebody, especially if it's somebody very close that you've been interacting with on a very consistent basis, our brains are really good at getting routines. We develop all these neural pathways that go to these particular movements, sounds, conversations, whatever it might be. And when that's broken, our brains need to remap. They physically need to remap our neural pathways. So we have these little pathways in our brain that are the conversations we have on a daily basis, the things we say to someone. I walk in the door when I come home, and the first words out of my mouth are usually to my cat, and it's usually like, along the lines of, "There's my little man." So if and when he is gone, my brain is going to walk in the front door and want to say, "Here's my little man," even though he's not here. He is, but it's things like that. When you come home and the first thing you do is say, "Hi, honey, I'm home," and your honey is no longer there. It takes time for our neural pathways to reconnect. And it's not just those physical things, like the things we say when we first see them, but just expecting that our person is still there and able to receive anything from us physically. A great example of this, my husband, when he lost his mother suddenly, it was the same year my brother died, he was always calling her. Like, they would talk on the phone maybe once a month or so, if not maybe every couple of weeks. But every time you hear something really cool or see something really cool, he's like, "Oh my God, I got to call mom." So he'd pick up the phone and call his mom. And when he would hear or see something really cool, his immediate reaction was to pick up his phone to call his mom. But she obviously was no longer there to do that. So it takes time for our muscle memory of our brain to move around and move into its new form of being. I'm really not doing the best job at explaining this, but I'm doing my best. Then there's just also that we miss their physical presence. In my eulogy for my mom, I referenced many times her hugs. My mom was great at the mom hug. If anybody could hug a mom hug, it was my mom. And she was always, always ready with a hug if I needed it. I remember vividly when my college boyfriend dumped me, I was in bed crying. She crawled in bed with me and hugged me. I lost a job and I showed up at her office because I didn't know what to do with myself. And I just meandered to her office and I showed up crying and I'm like, "I lost my job." And she just immediately embraced me in a hug. And I won't have that now. I mean, I can hug my husband. I have plenty of people to hug me. I'm not like I'm lacking the hug, but I'm lacking that physical connection with my mom now. Even if my mind is starting to finally, and I still, I'm only a couple months out from my mom's death, and I'm still struggling to remember that she is, not remember, but that she is gone, forever. And I still kind of have those moments where it's not quite there yet. But even though I am starting to get there, I still have that sensory perception of the way my mom smelled, the way she felt when I hugged her. She would be so mad at me for sharing that. Oh, she doesn't care, but she was getting older, so she was shrinking. And I joked because my mom was always taller than me. I'm only 5'1", and when I was growing up, my mom was 5'6". And I remember the last couple of years, I was like, "Look, Mom, I can look you in the eye when I hug you now." But I remember that physical feeling of hugging her. And now I exist in this world where I can't do that anymore. The other thing that makes these things hard to accept, I'm going to talk a little more about sudden loss now versus anticipated loss. And because this one's kind of ringing true in my heart right now. There's that, we like to tie things up in nice little bows as humans. We love to categorize and make things make sense. And when a death happens suddenly, and I mean, we went through this with my brother because his death was unexpected as well, and it was very sudden. Our minds want so bad to make sense of it all. And I know what happened to my mom. I know why she died, and I understand that. But there's all the, like, she was in the middle of working on her Christmas list when she died. I'm like, well, what about finishing that Christmas list? What about wrapping the presents she had already bought? This can't be the end of it. She still has to see, I'm going to start choking up. She still has to see her great-granddaughters take their first steps. There's a lot of things that we all, and even she, anticipated she would still do. Because we didn't anticipate her dying this soon, like at this age. Like, you know, Mom and I were always open about our conversations, and we would talk about what would happen after she was gone. I was like, yeah, but you're going to be around at least another 10 years, right? And she said, yeah. And obviously that wasn't the case. But there's that, my brain just can't make sense of the fact that I anticipated her to live much longer than she did. She did too. She had no idea that she was going to die when she did. So we just have the inability to have loose ends. And there's so many loose ends with her death. When it comes to sudden losses, there's just that inability to have an open-endedness to it. I hope that makes sense. So let's talk about the anticipated loss, because it still messes with our brains, even though we know that they might be dying. Like, I'll use an example of you have a loved one with it can be any terminal illness, but let's say cancer. You have gotten into a new rhythm with them. And again, this goes back to that first thing with the neural pathways and the muscle memories. You have this new routine of care for them. And yes, there's chemotherapy or there's treatments. And then there's that couple weeks where they're not feeling well. And then a couple weeks where they're doing pretty well. And we do work on these things and we talk about these things. And I take her to the park on Fridays. And then I'm taking her to the park on Fridays in her wheelchair. But even though we see these things coming, when the death occurs, we're still in that rut of, we go to the park on Thursdays or whatever day it was, when there's her medicine I'm supposed to give her, and her medicines are still out on the counter. She died on a Tuesday. Wednesday through Saturday's medicines are still in the pillbox. Like, we're still looking for that closure. Even if we did see it, our brains are still trying to process out of those routines. So it's difficult for us to accept. And then the last, this is mostly anecdotal. I did read a few articles. And again, no matter what you may or may not believe as far as what happens after we die, we don't concretely know. We just don't concretely know what happens after we die. So we only know our lives up to wherever we are in that life, whether you're 15 years old or 90 years old. You only know that 15 or 90 years. You might know some history, things that happened before you were born. But the concept of, and I'm starting to get into philosophy here, but the concept of eternity or nothingness, complete nothingness, whatever concept you may believe in, like, our brains don't fully grasp those concepts. They kind of have a small understanding of them, but there's no way for us to really know them until we know them, if that makes sense. It kind of makes sense. It kind of doesn't. Again, I don't want to get too deep into philosophy because I get existential crisis every time, anytime I start discussing philosophy, and I get a little wigged out. But let's just say our tiny little lizard brains just don't grasp the finality of things because we don't experience them until we do. I didn't describe that really well, but you know, I'm hoping you know what I mean. We like to observe, we like to witness things, and we like to see things to believe them. in a manner of speaking. So if it's not tangible and we can't see, hear, feel, touch it, it's really kind of hard for us to fully grasp. And I'm not saying that's everybody, because some people will say, well, I fully get it, and that's fine. But not all of us do. So I hope all of that made sense. I kind of blathered on a little bit. Guys, I'm a little rusty, okay? It's been a minute since I've recorded a podcast episode. So that's a little bit about our difficulty with accepting death. So if this is you, if there has been a loss in your life and you're struggling to really understand, accept, acknowledge, embrace the fact that a death has occurred, you are normal. You are okay. You're not weird. You're not broken. You're not crazy. You are totally normal. And now you know why. We have little tiny human lizard brains, and they are not the best at processing certain things. So, but beside that, there's a lot to what our brains do. So there's just a little touch of it. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Please, again, know that you are not alone and you are not crazy. So, all right, now that we are at the end of the episode, it's been a while. It's time for the Death Deck. Woo. All right. I do so many interviews, and I don't introduce the Death Deck that way, so I don't get to do my little Death Deck chant as often. But anyway, so I've got the Death Deck here. I'm gonna shuffle the cards up. I flipped one upside down. I saw it. It was one I just read recently, so I'm not gonna pull that one. So, all right, I'm gonna pull one out of the middle, and we have. Oh, this one does not apply to me, but let's read it here anyway. What keeps you from talking about death more often? A, anxiety and worry about my own demise. B, it stirs up too much grief from prior losses. Or C, nothing. I accept and talk about it pretty openly. I think y'all know where I am with that because I have a whole podcast on it. I am very open about talking about death. Now, that said, yes, I do get scared sometimes when I talk about death. And I do get scared when I think about my own mortality because I'm normal. So if you get scared talking about death and thinking about it, if it gets you thinking about your own mortality and it makes you a little anxious, that's okay. You're perfectly normal. If that is the case, if talking about it just absolutely scares you to the point that you can't, take some deep breaths, reach out to me. We can talk about death anxiety. Maybe I'll do, I can't remember if I've done an episode on death anxiety. If not, I guess I need to. I'll go look. And if I did do one, I'll link it in the description below. If not, I guess I'll just have to do one. But I have a little workbook on working through accepting mortality and working through your death anxiety. So I'll happily send that to you. Just let me know. Okay. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. A slightly shorter episode, but these solo ones tend to be that way. Again, I've got some great interviews coming up. I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited to have you all listening, although, and here I go, I'm going to get choked up again. My mom was one of my number one listeners. She used to text me all the time and say, I just listened to your episode this week, Nikki. It was so good. And I'm going to miss hearing that. So I'll tell you what, if you would humor me and take a moment after this episode is complete, after you're done listening, watching to this, and just have a moment of silence for the number one fan of Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula, my mom. Whew, okay, I didn't expect to get that choked up at this. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, if you want to help support me in the show, please go to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. If you have a story you would like to share with my listeners, you can go to my website. It's nikkithedeathdoula.com/podcast. There's a link at the top of the screen to submit to be on the show. And that is all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, as always, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.